Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Winning Women Talk Show. I'm Regina Shearer, your host, and I'm so glad to be with you this evening. And I'm very grateful that you found time in your evening to spend watching and listening to the Winning Women Talk Show. If you're a regular, you know that each and every week we try to present a different woman who shares her journey to doing that special something that makes her feel successful and fulfilled. And those things are usually what these women are very passionate about. And I hope that as you've been listening to the women, that you and their journeys and the things that they've had to overcome, the obstacles and the some of the very trying circumstances that they may have experienced in trying to obtain that opportunity to fulfill their passion, that you've learned something and that something has inspired you, motivated you. And if you're right on the edge of trying to determine, should I or shouldn't I, because I've always wanted to, then let me just say that the mantra of this show is, if she can do it, so can I. And so I hope tonight you will hear something that will make you say that to yourself. As always, we love for you to participate, and we want you to be able to call in to us at 781-384-5587. And again, it's on the screen. I'll say it, 781-384-5587. Or you can email me, Regina, at rgbinternetradio.com, because we look forward to your participation in this show. I have been asked by some people why sometimes I share so much information about our guests. And the reason is because every one of our guests has earned the right to be recognized for the amazing and invaluable contributions they make, not only to our society, but into individual lives. And I think we need to know how that has panned out in their personal lives in terms of recognition and accomplishment. So I like sometimes to tell a few extra things, and that's what I'm going to do tonight, because our guest is Dr. Ingrid Walker Descartes, who serves Maimonides Children's Hospital in Brooklyn, New York, in two capacities, one as a clinician and the other as an administrator. In her clinical roles, she practices general pediatrics and child abuse pediatrics. As an administrator, she serves, get ready, as program director of the Pediatrics Residency Training Program, fellowship director for the Child Abuse Fellowship Program, vice chair of education for the Department of Pediatrics, and director of child maltreatment services for the Children's Hospital. Dr. Walker Descartes has published in numerous articles and book chapters focused on various forms of child maltreatment, and she is strongly involved in child protection and advocacies in several local and national professional organizations. And several is putting it mildly because there's a lot of them. But I can give you an example, such as the New York State Child Abuse Medical Provide Program, and the Ray Helfer Society for Child Maltreatment Pediatricians. She's been a consultant for New York City's Administration for Children's Services Accountability Review Panel across the 5 boroughs to enhance the healthcare agenda for all vulnerable children and the issues surrounding the disproportionate numbers of Black and Brown families in the child welfare system. She's the recipient of the 2023 Cranes New York Notable Black Leaders Award, and in 2024 as one of Crane's New York Women of Influence. Dr. Walker Descartes is a graduate of Haverford College with a bachelor's in molecular biology and immunology. She has an MBA in healthcare administration from St. Joseph's College and an MPH from Mount Sinai School of Medicine of New York University. And she earned her MD at the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry. There's so much more, but she's going to tell us the rest. So welcome, Dr. Walker Descartes, to the Winning Women.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here, and to share this time with yourselves and the audience.
Well, we are glad. And I know that everyone who is listening or watching tonight already understands you are a very busy woman. And so we are very appreciative that you could find time in your busy day, because I'm sure at this point of the day, this is your time to relax and spend with your family. But thank your family for allowing you to share this time with me tonight on this show and with all of our audience. So what we always start with, nothing new, but asking you to tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, growing up, education, and what put you on this trajectory
Mhm.
to doing what you do as a child advocate and a pediatrician for children.
So I'm an immigrant to this country. I was born in the Caribbean. I was born in Jamaica. And I came here when I was about 11 years old. Always loved books. And I think one of the amazing things about coming to this country, when you're in the Caribbean, access to books is something that, not every family has. And I would say my family sacrificed to make sure we had a good exposure to books, and school was not negotiable. It just is what it is. And I absolutely enjoyed it. And so coming to this country where you got your own books and you got access to books, you got books to take home, it was really amazing. And I really enjoy learning, if that isn't obvious from all the degrees. But I love learning. I'm a forever student. So I spent a lot of time just reading. The impetus to go into pediatrics, I'm going to say, happened with the birth of my sister when I was about 13 years old. I think, like many families, childcare resources being strapped, I was the natural babysitter. And a big part of that was just seeing, um, and I'm going to say, after I got over the initial yuck of knowing that my parents were having sex, I think she became this really beautiful gift. And just watching and learning and protecting her and all of those things really put me on the trajectory for, I think, advocacy, for children, and pediatrics. The child abuse piece, I think it chose me. I don't think I chose it.
Okay. Okay. Um, so when you say it chose you,
Hmm.
can you tell all of us what you mean by that?
So I just know I loved working with children, and even prior to medical school. And I have to a little bit back. I was in public school, and I got access to, invited to have, for a scholarship called A Better Chance for inner city kids who did really well. So I was the valedictorian of my junior high school. And what A Better Chance did was selected those kids who were kind of considered the top 5% and give them an opportunity for boarding school. And
Mhm.
so I would say that exposed me to resources that set me on a trajectory to guess, I would say, realize how much I could offer or how much I could give back to my community.
Right. Right.
Um, with with that and going to med school, and a lot of my educational journey has been scholarship and merit-based scholarship derived. So I was able to go to University of Rochester, School of Medicine. And when I was there, I was surrounded by very few people that looked like me, and always wanted to get back to a space where I felt that I was tangibly giving back to a community of people that looked like me. So I signed up to volunteer in the community, and I asked to be placed where I could work with families of color. And they had me work at a foster care clinic. And that's where I was working with families of color, dealing with trauma, complex psychosocial issues. And so I think that was the bug that bit me, that um, hearing what these children go through and how incredibly resilient they are,
Mhm.
to me, there was just no greater thing to protect than that. And that started me. That started what I would say was when this path chose me.
Okay. And I can understand that. Totally, especially because, and I don't, I'm not a proponent of believing everything I hear or and even everything I see. Um, but the foster care system sometimes gets a very bad rap.
Mhm,
And when and there is no disagreement that there are some children who are maltreated in that system, but there are other children who are loved to life, I'll put it that way. And
mhm,
so, but of course that's a great, if you're working in that realm, that's a great place to see and be exposed to conditions as they really are. And
mhm,
the greater thing is, though, that you said that it chose you, which tells me that your heart, was in that from
mhm,
that point. uh,
mhm.
Now I'm just curious, is this a family trait? Is this something all of you share? Are you all this way, that you, when you see injustice or mistreatment or something, or needs, people with serious needs, that you're responsive to them? Or is this uniquely you?
I have to say it really comes from, and I'm not going to say uniquely me, because I think coming from a small island where communities raise children together, and where people can to some extent survive without a social welfare system, it tells you that the connections people have to depend on each other and come to each other's rescue is
Yeah.
really important. And I think as the island continues to rebuild, we see some of that, just the stories of incredibly resilience. And so coming from that, and coming from parents who instilled just doing right and not being bystanders if wrong is being done, and learning that from my grandparents on both my mom and my dad's side, and coming from a strong line of women who don't color in the lines and will speak out and do what they have to do. And my brother was a police officer in New York City for years, and did counterterrorism and all of that. My sister, she kind of chose the other end, which is protecting animals. She is a phenomenal groomer. And so we've all been just kind of raised with a, I would say, very strong core, or from a cut from cloth, that it is our duty to protect, and it's our duty to respect life. And so
I
I
love
will
that.
say I'm not unique. And yeah, I'm not. And yeah, I'm not.
I love that. And I appreciate the fact that you said, when there's not a social welfare system where people have to care about their neighbors, and
Yes.
and not only their family, but the people who live next door, across the street. That's a wonderful thing. So, as I gave the introduction, there are so many things you are involved in. Of all these different things, though, which one gets you most excited in a positive way?
Huh, that's a tough question. I
Okay.
think I've worked hard to only do what I love. And all the things that I do it with love. If I have no heart for it, Regina, I'm not going to waste time on it,
Hmm.
honestly. And so I see all of the things as I'm happy busy. And if you can visualize kind of a stove with several pots on it, and when this one is about to boil, you pay attention to it. And when that one is calm, you kind of do something else. That's kind of how I run all the things that I'm involved in. And it's funny you talked about the foster care system, because child abuse pediatrics, as I do it, when I came out of my training, it was not even a specialty. And so it became a specialty after the interest. And once it became a specialty, I was, as I say, your desire to help pushes you where to go. Because I came out when I came out of training with my background, I went to court, because that's a part of what we do. We testify in court if kids are abused. I went to
Hmm.
court, and they asked me if I was board certified in child abuse pediatrics, which I wasn't, because the training I had just focused on abused children. It wasn't called child abuse pediatrics. And when I said I wasn't, and the lawyer said, well, there's nothing that you can tell us that's going to make a difference. And I said, okay. And so I went and sought out what was the process to become board certified. and I had to put my own portfolio together because I did not have the training in it, all of the training. I had the clinical exposure. And I petitioned the board to take the exam, and I passed the exam. Now, that being said, I went back to court afterwards to retestify, and the question was asked, am I board certified? And I said yes. And the lawyer said, okay, I rest my case. And so when I
Really?
saw that that certification made such a difference for the children I was trying to protect, it was important for me to pursue that. And I try to talk to my learners about that every day, that if you are passionate about something, you don't half step. You go the entire way. And that's going to be dictated by what your patients need, not your ego, because it's going to be bruised along the way several times over. The question is, focus on the long game and give your all to it.
Right, right. So I'm curious, and I'm sure that because this is an international show and there are people in other parts of the world, for a pediatrician, what is your age range of care?
hmm So our age range we see from birth through 21. I will tell you kind of 22, 23 can be that gray zone because we find it hard to let go of our patients. Sometimes we may let go because of other complexities to health and they need adult specialists, but we see that age range from child through 21.
I don't. I'm amazed. I'm shocked. I would never. When I think of pediatrics, I think of you know infants, toddlers, preschool, kindergarten, maybe elementary school to age of 10 or 11, but never to 21 years old.
Well, as you think about it, the brain is still developing, and maybe that will explain a lot as to why some of our children, not outside of the age range you think of, still make decisions like they're toddlers. But
Ah,
that's a whole other story. But the brain is still developing, and so it develops quite a bit to that age. So we consider all of that, pediatrics. And I would say if there are adults with cognitive delays where the brain is functioning at a lower level, you might find pediatricians might hold on to their cognitively delayed 30-year-old who functions at the level of a 12-year-old. Sometimes that is also a possibility.
right. So in the residency program, um, there are future Dr. Ingrid Walker Descartes.
I hope so, and I pray so every day.
Yeah, in those programs who care and are striving to be the best they can be in this field of pediatrics. And what do you find as you observe your residents, those who are in these fellowship programs? What do you find are common factors that make you feel good that yeah they're in this program, they're going to do well, and then on the opposite end, what are some of the greatest challenges overall that
Mhm,
these and I'll call them students, even though they're
mhm,
residents, but
mhm.
that face them in this program.
Mhm. So I feel like one of the amazing things, and I just wrapped up my interview season where we interview about 300 and something individuals for 20 positions. So it's pretty competitive.
Oh
And
my.
I always thank the group to say, it doesn't matter what program they go to. I'm just happy they chose pediatrics because overall, right now, the pediatric workforce is shrinking. And a big part of that is because in medical school, they're lessening the exposure to children and the needs of children, and also the reality of just loans and what it costs to get an education and what that looks like with the salary differentials between those that take care of children and those that take care of adults. So I'm always blessed when I see people, or I feel so grateful when they're interested in something and I am passionate about, whether they come to my program or not. Once they come to our program, one of the things that's really important, and we actually talk to the candidates, is that we look for what we call generalizable skills. And what I always say is if you work at Wawa, 7-Eleven, or Starbucks, and you see someone who's an employee of the month, you have the same skills, they have the same skills we're looking for. The clinical care and the clinical acumen will give you, will build on that. But I've never met anyone that says that doctor is a nasty individual, but God, I love that guy. No one says
Right.
that, you know? So
Yeah.
it's the same set of skills. I want them service with a smile, roll their sleeves up and do the hard work, and run towards pain, because that's what people are going to come to you with. And I also want in my residents and I want them to have experienced struggle. I want them to be proud of the struggles they've had, because no one comes to the hospital to hear about your wonderful, amazing life. And the only way you can get down to that level and tap in when people are most vulnerable is if you've been there yourself. So we look for these skills, we look for resilience, and the people that are in my program, I have to say, are a great combination of those skills and resilience, and they want to give back to underserved and underinsured, because Maimonides is a safety net hospital. So all
Right.
of those things are really important, and that's what we look for. And all of those things, seeing those skill sets develop, brings me joy. We have a faculty of over 80 faculty members, and I'm happy to say I've been the program director for about 11 of them. So even when
Oh,
they
wow.
train and leave, they come back.
Now that's a good feeling, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That lets you know you did something right, especially after they've had that time period, that decade or so, and then they return,
Correct.
recognizing now how important it is to educate the next group
Correct.
coming along. That's
Correct.
and it's so funny you mentioned that, because I was going to say, as the vice chair of education for the Department of Pediatrics, um,
Mhm.
are, are you more involved in the assessment of the students and residents, or the curriculum, or just the faculty and keeping them on their toes?
Mhm.
Where is your greatest focus in that work?
So my greatest focus in that work is meeting the needs of the patients through, we have an organization that's called the ACGME. So they basically license the program to teach. And they have a set of non-negotiables, which is making sure we cover all the subspecialties and so on. But I am more responsible for what I would consider the subtleties of delivering care. And so, as you deliver care to the vulnerable, we focus on what we call social determinants of health. We want our doctors versed in that. We want our curriculum based on that. So, what is that? Social determinants of health are social factors that affect health outcomes. So, that
Mm,
would be housing, that would be access to healthy food, that would be how would I say, the quality of food available. That would be employment, unemployment. We screen for all of these things. So in terms of just what I'm in charge of, it's really setting the curriculum and also setting the overall culture and tone of the program. Doctors who are attendings, they're going to do their work, but I set the tone as to how they include trainees in the work, how trainees are treated, and basically ensure that our program continues a process called accreditation so that we can continue to teach. I also want my residents vocal. I want them to tell us when they're doing things right or wrong, because if a physician is vocal and they can speak out, they will encourage that in their patients. And a lot of the patients we serve do not feel empowered in their spaces. So we
right.
want to make sure that we train our physicians to be empowered so they can then teach their patients to be empowered in their space, because that's the only way we're going to be more effective. So to answer your question, I'm in charge of the tone, the tenor, the curriculum, and how medicine is delivered, but not the content of what's delivered, how it's delivered.
Well, that's the important thing, because we call it the customer, right? Or whatever you want to call the patient. We
Mhm.
call it your bedside manner.
Correct.
And
Correct.
that is so key to our ability to believe that you're going to treat us in a way that we will recover from whatever we're experiencing, that we can trust you, that we have confidence in your skill sets,
Yep.
right? Or you make us feel like we're just a number, you're in a rush, you got 20 more patients and I don't really matter, you're just getting the basics, and you're going to eventually forget about me, right? And so that bedside manner counts, and I love the fact that you are trying to engage the trainees in a way that they need to engage the patients.
Correct, correct. And
That
and and I said there are two things, and I talked to my residents about it. I say there's your bedside manner and there's your bookside manner. Because if
oh,
you're going to be talking to patients, you better know what you're talking about. So you better read your books and know what you are doing, because you have to pass those boards and do those things in order to get to the bedside. And I think even more importantly and responsibly for children, we don't gamble with anybody's lives, but people's children, no matter what their socioeconomic status is, are valuable to them. Respect that. And with if you respect that, you will make sure your bookside manner matches your bedside manner.
I love that. That that's a nice. I like that. I could use that in a few other fields as well. But thank you. I love that. So I want to ask you with the trainees, and those who are pediatric residents, especially when they are they pretty much in tune with what to expect when they are observing or actually treating children, in particular, younger children, but now that I know goes to 21 and any of
Mhm,
those ages, and they recognize that there's maltreatment and abuse involved.
mhm. So I would say a lot of the physicians who enter pediatrics enter it seeing kind of all the positive things. And so I would say my specialty, child abuse pediatrics, is kind of the ugly side that's behind the curtain that some of them don't quite see. I think also there's a reality for folks going into pediatrics that they're all about the kids. But guess what? Parents won't let you touch their kids if they don't trust you. So it's actually all about the parents. And then you get access to the kids. And the question is, how much will you do and build rapport with parents so you can get access to the kids? So I think there is kind of that disillusion that's quickly kind of, comes to a reality. The other part of it is that sometimes people go into medicine and they get in and they just want to do what they want to do, and it's called, we call it autonomy, which is your ability to function on your own. And when they come in, I think residents that are more naive think of autonomy as, okay, I get to do what I can do by myself. And I tell them, and I said, this is how I explain it to them. As you're attending, it's my job to supervise you. I have two doctors, and I'm going to give you my driver's license because you are going to practice under me. And I'm going to say, I want you to take this car and deliver it to the Bronx from Brooklyn, across the five boroughs, maybe about
Mhm,
4 hours it would take in reality.
mhm,
So resident number one takes the car, goes, resident number two takes off. About 5 minutes later, resident number one calls me and say, hey, I almost hit a fire hydrant. And I'm like, did you hit it? No, but I almost did. I said, okay, when you see fire hydrants, you need to swerve out a little bit, give it some space, slow down. Another 10 minutes, resident one again calls me. I almost hit a person. Did you hit the person? No, I didn't, but I almost did. But I heard what you said about fire hydrants, and I swerved and gave him a little room. But I have to tell you, as I was driving off, the person kicked the door and it has a dent in it. And I'm like, but you didn't hit him. No, I didn't. Then about 40 minutes later, they call me. You know what? I almost hit a person, but they were in a wheelchair. I swear I did everything, but that wheelchair made me okay. And then finally they get there. I don't hear anything from resident number two. And then I go to inspect the car that I gave to both trainees. Resident number one called me every 5 minutes and I see a dent in the door. Resident number two got the car there, never called me, but the door is hanging off, the fender is hanging off, the side view mirror is hanging off, and I have no clue how it happened. And I'll
mm.
say to them, guess which person I'm going to trust more to practice under me and give autonomy to? It's the person who knows when they're in over their heads and they're going to call me before it gets worse. And so that kind of understanding of how much trust has to be developed before I let you do things on your own is
Mhm.
one of the biggest things that I feel that generationally isn't communicated well in the training environment, because our young people come in wanting to all that autonomy. And there's that sense of almost like, I trust that you have the knowledge. My generation, you had to prove that you had the knowledge, and you have to prove that you could be trusted. So I feel like in my space as vice chair of education, I'm constantly leveraging a conversation between the attendings to give the residents their license to drive with, and the residents realizing how much of an opportunity and a trust someone is doing in this kind of apprenticeship kind of learning space.
Yeah. I love your outside of the box viewpoints and view on
Thank you.
training. I just love that. Your students have to love that too,
I
because
hope
you're
so.
testing them off the paper, right?
Correct. Correct.
And they realize it after the fact. You're
Correct.
giving them that chance to, as you say, to be autonomous, to be independent. And yet you're saying there's always restrictions, there's always limitations, and you need to
Correct.
be aware of it. And it's so nice because without having to point your finger at them, they for
Correct.
themselves can see,
Correct.
oh, I
Correct.
didn't handle that well. Listen,
Correct.
for those of you who have just joined us, this amazing woman that you've been listening to is Dr. Ingrid Walker Descartes. She is she is a faculty member at Maimonides Children's Hospital in Brooklyn, but she also is an administrator overseeing 4 or 5 different departments. And she's sharing that all have to do with pediatrics, child maltreatment, and child abuse. And she has just been sharing some wonderful nuggets with us this evening. But we have to take a break. Before we do that, though, we would love to hear from you. The lines are open, and you can call us at 781-384-5587, or you can email me, Regina at rgbinternetradio.com. We would love to hear from you. So we don't want you to go too far. We're going to have a very brief commercial break from one of our sponsors, and then we will be right back with Dr. Ingrid Walker Descartes.
Do you know how many people are harmed by domestic violence every day? Every minute, 20 people are physically abused by an intimate partner. Do you know what the leading cause of homelessness is for women? Domestic violence. Do you know how domestic violence ends? Through your help. If you know someone who needs help from abuse, please call Portal to Hope at 781-338-7678. Portal to Hope is a survivor-driven team seeking to provide shelter, safety, and a pathway to gaining an abuse-free life. Call Portal to Hope at 781-338-7678. We are here to help.
And we are back with our guest tonight, Dr. Ingrid Walker Descartes. Dr. Descartes, one of the emails that came through that I thought I'd like to share, it says, "Good evening, Dr. Ingrid. I'm hearing these amazing things about you, and this is a broad question. What is a typical day for you, from when you start to when you finish? What are your daily tasks or goals? Are they varied or very structured? And finally, do you personally meet with children every day?"
Mhm. So I personally don't meet with children every day. So my day usually, can start at 7 o'clock with a virtual meeting. One of the things that COVID has nicely left us is that our days can start earlier. So I start my meetings pretty early. And I then do meetings up until about 9 o'clock. Then I get to the hospital by then, because my commute to the hospital that I love working at is about an hour 45 each way. And so I take my meetings then. The residents have morning report where they talk about their cases overnight, and I join virtually to kind of listen in on the discussion and add what I can and listen to them learn. And then I'll see if there are any consults if I'm on call. If I am not on call, which I did child abuse pediatrics by myself for about 16 years at the hospital. And we are the only pediatric trauma center in Brooklyn. So I was very busy. But I've been very lucky to have a medical student that saw her first child abuse case with me, and it stuck with her, and she actually trained with me, and now she is my colleague and my partner for our child abuse practice. So with her there, I have a lot more time. I do meet with my residents as often as I can, with one-to-one meetings if I can, and then I will do consultations, which might be in the ICU setting. A lot of children that are harmed, they may be in an ICU where they are, close to death. And, my colleagues are doing what they can do. Or, you know, again, writing your notes and stuff. The day is varied, but there's a lot to do surrounding kind of the care of children, because it's not just the care of children specifically, but also the care of the people taking care of the children. And I would say that's kind of, what fills my day, and checking in on everyone and making sure. And then the paper side of everything, which is just documenting. So my days are varied. I would say on a 2 week that I'm on call, I might get 6 or 7 child abuse consults. And that is how busy I am. Not every consult is child abuse, but it also tells you how much trauma children are experiencing on a daily basis.
Wow. It's still a lot. It's a lot to process, it's a lot to oversee, and it's a lot to document. So it's still a lot. The next question says, "Good evening, Dr. Walker Descartes. Am curious about the residents in the pediatrics programs. What is the success ratio for them to continue in that field? What percentage of them decide they're going to go into another avenue of specialty?"
Once they choose pediatrics, it's pretty much kind of that path. Under the umbrella of pediatrics, there's several other specialties. Given that we're a children's hospital, all of our residents are actually exposed to all the subspecialties available. So every year we put out residents that continue in the subspecialty realm, where they become pulmonologists. So you can think of every organ system having a specialist. As a program, we put out the most, I would say, from my understanding, put out the most pediatric pulmonologists across when compared to other programs across the country. We also put out a lot of generalists. So it's very difficult to switch from pediatrics to adult medicine unless you do something called med peds, where you have to take 2 boards. So every specialty has a board associated with it. So people tend to stay the path, because those exams aren't cheap either. So they tend to stay the course. But some go into generalists, some become pediatrics, but pretty much all of my residents go on to contribute to pediatrics in meaningful ways.
Do all of your residents eventually work with children who have been abused or maltreated, or can they just stick to rubella, measles vaccinations?
If they try to avoid it, I would say probably pediatrics is not for them, because the unfortunate thing is that trauma is such a reality for so many children. And so with the fact that in my specialty, there's probably about 300 and something of us across the country, because you can imagine that there's not many people who want to do it. However, despite, the number, so we have about 33 training programs across the country. Every year, we probably have about maybe 6 or 7 people who want to fill those slots. So not a lot of people. So it tells you how much people want to avoid this specialty. That being said, all of my residents have to do a rotation through our child abuse clinic to also focus not just on the clinical diagnosis of, but the mental health piece. And there's also another part of it where it's a tough specialty, because we function not just in the clinical environment. I go to court quite a lot. I testify quite a lot. I have to know the legalities around child protection, and also kind of have another skill set of speaking publicly and speaking to grand juries and stuff like that. Because with children, because they're nonverbal, many of them can't speak. So my job is, for instance, if an infant comes in and they're 3 months old, and they come in with traumatic injuries. The evaluation I do can tell you exactly what that adult did to that child, or that child cannot speak. And I give a voice to those injuries. So, as ugly as it is, there is a purpose, because I always tell people what I consider success may be different for other physicians, right? Because all of their patients survive, and that's a success. I have to redefine success. Some of my patients might die. My success is that the person responsible is held accountable.
Right.
So, as much as my learners may want to avoid it, all of them are going to know how to identify it.
Right. Well, that's it. I'm glad you said this already, because there's another question here, and it says, "Hello, Dr. Ingrid. I'm curious about your residents again. What happens when they think pediatrics is just doing the basic things for children to make sure that they are healthy, growing and developing in the normal way, and then suddenly they come across abuse or maltreatment? How do they interact with the parents? What impact is there? Does someone else do that? Are you the person who becomes the advocate and intercedes, or do they have to become advocates themselves?"
Mhm. So when residents are exposed to this, we try to kind of have a sense of, and again, we have mandated reporter laws. So you don't have to be sure about it, you just have to suspect it. But we also have to realize that is sometimes flawed, right? Not sometimes, it's very flawed, because all of us have biases, right? And so there's an understanding of kind of what you're seeing. Is it really what you're seeing? And
Right.
so I don't push any resident or any trainee to handle anything that they're uncomfortable with. And that's why I talked about that autonomy. That would be a time a resident would reach out to a faculty and to say, I think this, I'm uncomfortable expressing it. Can you help me do this? We go there and we model this, and then they learn to do it. But if you truly want to advocate and support children, you have to kind of embrace the rain with the sunshine. And that means you're going to have to embrace the ugly part of pediatrics, which is when parents don't do what they're supposed to do, and speak up. You can only advocate when you feel like you're on the right side of things. And even when you're on the right side of things, you still have to examine your biases, because I see it all the time. Because as much as I work in a child protection system, I find myself protecting families from that system,
Oh, yes. Yes. I can see that.
you know.
Do do those who are trained and educated in your department, do they automatically become certified in child abuse, maltreatment issues so that they can appear in court? Or do some say, nope, that's not going to be me. I'm going to go see Dr. Ingrid Walker Descartes and
So
she can.
the way I explain it is that we're all mandated reporters, meaning that if we suspect abuse, we have to report it. I think some people conflate that with being a child abuse specialist, because, and the way I put it is, all of us can hear murmurs. Doesn't make me a heart surgeon. you know I have
Mm,
to send it to the specialist. So if you think there is abuse, you have that right to call it in. The evaluation of it should then go to the specialist, because again, our specialty is trained in also identifying things that could be accidental. We're also very versed in all the other things that can mimic, sex abuse, all those things. So, for instance, I'll get a case where I hear that a child is constantly masturbating and touching themselves. The parent is so incredibly embarrassed and doesn't know what to do. And we bring the child in, and I kind of feel like there's a part of it where, we have that song, Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes. We don't talk
mhm.
about privates. The fact that we don't talk about privates, it actually sets our children up to be more vulnerable, because they do have curiosities about their privates. So
Right.
because of that, we get, okay, this child's masturbating. Many times when we see this child, sometimes they have a skin condition that affects the vagina. Sometimes they have pinworms, other things that makes them itchy, but a child just keeps rubbing that area. So sometimes we pathologize things that are just kind of
Mm,
just needs a closer look. So as child abuse specialists, we're also kind of pediatric gynecologists, and kind of look more closely. So that being said, not everything that looks like abuse is abuse, but if you
Right.
suspect it, you should call it in. But then the specialist like myself takes over to make sure that whatever happens. So, for instance, a case might be called in for the right reason, but then it's actually nothing to be alarmed about. I have to make sure that ACS appropriately closes this case and that this family is left alone. Because some professions, if that mother is an educator or if that father is a social worker, or whatever, they can lose their job from the fact that a case was open. So it's also
Right.
advocating to the very end of that. So everyone is a mandated reporter, but not everyone is a child abuse specialist.
Wow. Okay. Again, for those of you who have just joined in and wondering who is this woman, you can see her name, Dr. Ingrid Walker Descartes, and she is talking to us about the work that she is a specialist in, which is child abuse, child maltreatment, and most importantly, pediatrics, which branches her into those other areas. And she oversees departments at Maimonides Hospital in Brooklyn, New York, Maimonides Children's Hospital, I should say. And those departments are for pediatricians, training pediatricians, future pediatricians, and educators of those pediatricians, all for the benefit of children. And so we're going to take another quick break. As I said before, there's still time. You can call in. If don't be phone shy. We love to hear from you. You can call in, and that call in number is 781 594. Well, let me get it because I might be giving you my own personal number. I have to 384 781 384 5587, or you can email me, Regina at RGB Internet Radio. I'm so excited about this show, but we have to take another quick break for one of our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Anthony DePiro, and I'm an employee here at Sabatino Mastrocola Insurance Agency, where I've worked for about 6 years. Our agency is a full-service agency. We specialize in auto, home, flood, life, and other insurance needs. We have a registry running service. We offer professional claim assistance, and many other things that will help you throughout the process of getting to insurance. I mainly specialize in commercial insurance, such as apartments, restaurants, offices, contractors, retail, and things of that nature. But the rest of the team here also specializes in home, auto, and other lines. We merged with Mastrocola Insurance about 2 years ago, and we're proud to house them here at 519 Broadway along with our office, and we all work together to service your needs. Stop by anytime here at 519 Broadway, or give us a call at 617-387-7466, or visit our website www.sabatino-ins.com.
And we are back. There was another question that is here, and that question is, how often do you take a break? That's the whole question. How often do you take a break?
Every chance I can get, every chance I can get. But I have to say, when you do enjoy the work that you do, and we were talking about this a little bit, I am a workaholic. I'm not going to say I'm not, but the fact is that I love what I do. And I've always prayed to have a job where I wasn't watching the clock to count the hours. And I feel blessed that I have such a job, as much as it's not about what we would consider the pretty side of pediatrics, but I enjoy what I do. But I do take time off, and I've also been raised with kind of that understanding that, idle hands are the devil's workshop. So even if I'm sitting and relaxing, I'm doing something with my hands. So I love crafting, I love creating, and so that's kind of how I deal with the stuff as I process it. But I
Okay. We have a caller on the line, and I believe I'm not sure. Good evening. Welcome to the Winning Women Talk Show. You are on the air with Dr. Ingrid Walker Descartes. And may I ask who's calling?
Yes, I am Selwyn Godsma from Florida.
Okay, so
Must be
Dr. Walker
something.
Descartes is smiling, so I think she may know you.
Yeah, just listening to Dr. Descartes, she sounds like she, in her day, it's not 24 hours, it's 30 hours. I would like to know the secret of her time management because, so much accomplishment, doing so much within a day sounds to me like her day of 30 hours and not the usual 24. What is the secret?
I would say the secret is making every minute count, and that means as well taking time out. And I give to when I'm in that place, and I talk to my residents about that compartmentalization a little bit. When I'm at work, I'm all at work. When I'm home, I'm all at home. When I'm having me time, I try to, and I'm learning to make that all of me time. And me time for me means creativity. So it's not I guess the quantity, it's the quality, and I make sure every single one of those minutes of those hours is quality time, and me doing something for myself or for somebody else that will feed my soul or theirs.
I think the caller hung up, and I think it's because if they're watching you, there's a delay between
Okay.
seeing you and hearing what you said. But we want to thank you. Was it Galvin or
Selwyn. That's my
some?
uncle. He's a minister in Florida, and it's funny because as a child, with the advocacy piece, I was in a lot of timeouts, and my timeouts was for talking back, and because he was such a force in our household, I had to pray during my timeout. So I was one of those kids in the corner, like, God, it's me again, because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I was always being fresh. So he's
Oh,
seen my advocacy from the early stages.
uh, oh, that's okay. It all at this stage. I just want you to know, Uncle dear, that it all worked as the Bible says. All things work for the good,
Yes.
and it all worked out for her good. And
Yeah.
so, well, so you have done a lot of traveling worldwide. What have you been able to identify, or what are some of the things that vary substantially when it comes to the treatment of children
Mhm.
in the areas of abuse and maltreatment that medically are not addressed like they are here in the United States? And I'm not going to say it's a big deal here because you when you said there's 300 of us, I'm just like in this big
Yeah.
I cannot believe the United States 300 specialists like you. But
Yeah.
anyway,
I would say I've traveled most of the Caribbean, not necessarily Europe. But what I see with children that kind of runs the gamut as it pertains to my particular specialty is their lack of a voice. And I think with that, what as much as things are different in the US. To some extent, children are raised to, if they can, speak up for themselves. And I think across cultures, you see that children should, and I always hear children should be seen and not heard. And that kind of teaching has placed children, race, religion, ethnicity, different islands, or whatever, at a huge risk because they too are going through things that will forever shape how they see, how they perceive life, how they perceive safety, how they perceive love, how they perceive kindness. And the people that, again, and my boss said this, and my chair said this, and he said children comprise what might be considered a small component of our society, but they're 100% of our future. And when
right?
we think about it, they're just so incredibly muted. And that's what I see across the board. And I've tried in my own raising of my children. I have a 19 and a 22-year-old and amazing stepchildren, where a big part of my raising them is for them to speak up and speak out. And sometimes has to be respectful, but even if it's to tell me that I'm wrong, I may not receive it well, but I want you to continue to do that. And these are the things that I feel that across the places that I visited, I encourage parents to if we're truly saying that we're not perfect, the hope is that the next generation will be a little bit more perfect, but they're not going to get there if we kind of drown out or not listen or make them feel uncomfortable to say what they need to say to get it maybe a little bit more right.
Yes. Yes. And to be quite honest with you, I recall as a child, and even going to say an adolescent, on verge of teenage years, but definitely in teenage years, but as an adolescent, knowing that something was going on with friends of mine. I grew up in a very small rural town in Pennsylvania, and knowing that things were going on with friends of mine, that they didn't even talk about with us, amongst ourselves, as close as we were, right? And then later on in life, being able to express that and feeling ashamed of it, and
Yeah.
and not feeling there was anyone, because of what you said. Children we grew up with children should be seen and not heard. If you
Yeah.
were around adults and they were talking, they would tell you go outside and play or whatever, because you're not even supposed to be around adults
Correct.
having
Correct.
these
Correct.
conversations. So
Correct.
yes.
Yes.
Well, I know that it's hard to believe, but our time has come to an end. And I have so many more questions, and there are a few other emails, but I just want to thank you. The work that you're doing is so vital. Our young people have so many challenges before them right now. It's a different world than where I came from,
Mm-hmm.
and their future they're going to have to build for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thankful that there are people like you who want to help to address those hurts
Mm-hmm.
and those shames that some of our children live with, that can impair all that they are meant to be, right? That can impair them from fully being able to be who they can be.
Mm-hmm.
But I heard you, there's always hope. And I heard you start this show using the word resilience.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's the great thing, that we
Yes.
have to hope that uh, all those other terms, grit and all of that, that it will continue to show itself in the development and the maturing of our children into adulthood. But the
Yes.
work you're doing is changing lives. And I
Mhm.
want to thank you so much, because children do need a voice, even if they're 21.
Mhm. Thank you, Regina. It was a pleasure being here, and thank you for sharing this stage. And I just want to thank my colleague, Lanita Cullinane, who connected us for the incredible sponsorship. The other part of doing this work is just the connection to the women that I've had that have been really amazing friends, and just the friends I've had. So, as to the hours of the day, I try to give myself to all those spaces, but friends, community, and children is really kind of what keeps my cup full. And I'm just blessed that I can give back. You never know. As I tell, my husband says sometimes, why do you do this work? It's so hard. And I said to him, you never know who's going to end up at our dining table as a relative. So if
Oh.
I provide care for all children and try to address as much hurt as I can, maybe the universe will smile to make sure the people that interact with our kids don't hurt them too much.
That is a wonderful. I hope everyone paid attention to that last comment. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank you.
for all you've shared. Thank you for all that you do. You are a winning woman. No doubt about it. As a matter of fact, I told you when I first talked, I said, you're phenomenal. And so you are indeed. Thank you for being on this show. And for all of you who joined us this evening, thank you for taking time to spend with us. We will be back next Thursday, same time, on the Winning Women Talk Show with a different woman. And we hope that you will spend that night with us as well. Have a great week, a great Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. And remember that that work changed lives for everyone, regardless of culture, gender, or age. And so, good night from the Winning Women Talk Show. Remember, if she can do it, so can you. So, love somebody. We're out of here. Good night.
Bye bye.